Hello, welcome to Herp Corner. Here we are by the Limpopo River in Valvater, Ethiopia, where we'll be discussing the Schlegel's beaked blind snake, also known as Schlegel's giant blind snake, Peter's giant blind snake, or Afrotyphlops schlegelii. Fun fact, these guys are the world's largest species of typhlopid. What the hell is a typhlopid? Well, first off, please calm down. Second off, typhlopids are snakes a part of the family Typholidae. They're blind snakes. Notable family members include Typhlops vermicularis, the European worm snake, who we've covered before. Just like that species, in fact, their tails are the same exact shape as their heads, rounded with, sometimes, a dull point. Usually blind snakes are like 4 inches. Schlegel's beaked blind snake, however, can grow up to 60 centimeters or 23 inches. It's almost like they are a normal snake. I love these guys so much, because of partially how unique every individual one of them looks. If you're in Botswana when you see a beaked blind snake, chances are he'll have a completely different look to the one you see in, say, Zambia. They're the same species, to be sure, but they'll have completely different colors. Some black and white, some brown on brown. Numerous sources have mentioned this species possessing polymorphism, which is the ability of an animal to change colors depending on the locality. Pretty cool! They have 3 different polymorphic color phases. First is known as the uniform phase, consisting of dark brown to light nougat dorsal scales, then the quote-unquote blotched phase with black to brown colors and a subtle yellow on their cheeks. The last phase, the striped phase, consists of black to white scales. This one's my personal favorite since it accentuates his nasal scale, or beak, I guess, with a black outline. They have rings of 30 to 44 scales in rows along their body. The Schlegel's beaked blind snake was discovered in 1847 by Giovanni Giuseppe Bianconi, an Italian zoologist and botanist. They're mostly found in coastal bush, sandveld bush, savannas, and grasslands, under rocks, logs, and dirt. In particular, those of Angola, Botswana, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Kenya, Malawi, southern Mozambique, northern Namibia, Somalia, South Africa, southern Sudan, Swaziland, Tanzania, northern Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. Quite a lot. They're a fossorial species, barely ever spotted above ground. The largest specimens are primarily underground. Unfortunately, these guys are one of the 18 species of their genus that the IUCN Red List has not assessed. With that in mind, we can't say for certain if they're protected, or if they're endangered, or what. Though, judging based on the recounting of a sighting from the Kruger National Park and a South African person, they're probably within the least concerned territory. The Kruger National Park documented seeing the species on 36 different occasions. Kerhula Lodge, a channel who has posted a very nice video of the species, notes in the comments that they don't think the beaked blind snakes are a protected species, or endangered for that matter, since they quote-unquote, have quite a lot of them in and around their garden. They go on to note the fact that one was recently found dead because it was squashed by an elephant who decided to stand on its head. Very tragic, but their notes are greatly appreciated. Also,
deze slang zat in ons zwembad. We hebben geen idee wat het is. Maar Sander heeft hem gered.
Little off topic, but what language are they speaking in the video? Not really relevant, just, curious. Sounds very pretty. If you ever go out looking for this species, a good place to look is around termite mounds, since in the wild they'll often feed on invertebrates like termites and ants and termite and ant-adjacent guys. Sometimes they'll just shove their entire heads into holes just to grab a bite, which can sometimes result in them being stuck like that for hours. Of course, if you ever find one like that, it's best not to mess with them. Yanking them out could injure their head, and they hate that. Though, it's also important to note that they are, of course, very common to find after it rains, since, the floor is flooded. Often in the wild, they look very, well fed, to say the least. Schlegel's beaked blind snakes are prone to obesity, since in the back half of their bodies they can possess quite a lot of fats. No doubt they've evolved this ability to better adapt with their diet. Think about it. If you primarily eat termites, a species that stays in one big congregation, you'll have to deal with splurging on a huge batch of food, then going a while without any, so you can look for the next colony. Sometimes you might go weeks without finding another one. This is a blind animal, after all. Probably doesn't make it much easier. For days where there's no food, it helps to have a little bit stored. In fact, binge eating is a very common survival strategy for them. Additionally, rapid ingestion of prey is another strategy they engage in. This is to minimize the amount of time spent in the actual burrows, since I'm sure you're very aware of how defensive termites and ants often are. This is more like how lizards eat than snakes. In fact, this is so divergent from how snakes eat that even the description is completely different. Not sure how to rephrase any of this, so I'll just read it directly. This is from the paper Dietary Habits and Reproductive Biology of Typhlopid Snakes from Southern Africa by John Webb, William Branch, and Richard Shine. Modern snakes swallow large prey using pterygoid walk, in which the snake's toothed upper jaws are alternatively ratcheted over the prey, thereby walking the snake's head over and around the prey. In contrast, Schlegel's beaked blind snakes rapidly, quote-unquote, rake small prey into the esophagus by synchronously rotating the toothed lower jaws in and out of the mouth. Blind snakes also rapidly rake prey into the esophagus, but they do this by asynchronously protracting and retracting the highly mobile toothed maxillary bones of the upper jaws. Now, that's an insane and really brutal way of describing them eat. Wouldn't want to be caught in the maw of this animal. Thankfully, we're not going to have to worry about that, since they're vastly uninterested in humans. Some people have mentioned blind snakes possessing venom of some kind, but that's greatly undocumented, so draw your own conclusions. They're mostly preyed upon by predatory birds and other larger snakes. As far as larger snakes go, a common example would be the purple glossed snake. Major sightings are usually on roads after it rains, usually not alive on roads after it rains. They're very often roadkill. Their care has, as far as I've seen, never been talked about ever. It's safe to say that the main things you focus on in their enclosure should be heat and substrate. Schlegel's beaked blind snakes are most commonly found in areas to the far right of this map, which happens to also be the, typically, most humid or tropical pieces of land. However, they're also occasionally found more west of Africa, which is notably more dry. This suggests that they're very hardy, able to survive a wide variety of conditions, though I think the best way to approach their enclosure would be a humidity of anywhere from 74% to 80%. The substrate could be a mixture of sand and soil, and you can spray the enclosure once or twice a day with some water. Though, since the Schlegel's beaked blind snake is fossorial, it's important for you to keep the substrate from becoming acidic. To prevent this, include a drainage layer, a cleanup crew, and some live plants. So, give them a bioactive enclosure, basically. Provide the other essentials, of course, a water bowl of dechlorinated water, a hide, and a food bowl, since they're insectivorous. You can feed them once a week at maximum. I say this because of the previously stated ability for them to binge a ton, then wait a few weeks before eating again. These guys are prone to obesity after all, so you gotta keep your eye on that. A much harder part is going to be actually getting your hands on the feeder insects. Remember, they primarily eat ants and termites, social insects. It isn't as easy as simply having a cockroach breeding colony. You'll have to keep a colony of ants or termites if you don't want to go out and buy a box of ants once a week. If you do want to buy a box of ants once a week, I'd suggest LLL Reptile. They're reputable breeders who sell harvester ants for reptile feeding. But if you want to keep your own ants, that is its own thing. I know absolutely nothing about ant husbandry, so you'll need to consult other sources for that. I used to be a huge fan of Ants Canada specifically. Does he still make good stuff about his ants? Either way, his old vivarium seemed really good for his ant colonies, so maybe consider checking those out. Sexual dimorphism is decently present, with females of this species being, on average, slightly longer than the males. They're also oviparous, which refers to the fact that they are possessing the ability to lay eggs. Specifically, clutches of anywhere from 4 to 25 eggs, though some have even laid up to 60 eggs. Said eggs hatch within 5 to 6 weeks. Breeding season begins early summer, late spring, so that's the apt time to attempt pairing. With all that said, I think these have the potential to be a great reptile for any moderate-level keeper. However, it's important to note the fact that you're not going to find Schlegel's beaked blind snakes for sale anywhere. Knowing that, only attempt keeping them if you're A, up to the task of caring for them, of course, B, intending to breed them, and C, live in the places that these guys are native to. That last one isn't a necessity, but who do you see importing these guys? Plus, even though they're not at risk for huge population loss, I would suggest that any one of them you catch, you release after getting them to produce eggs. This would prevent any chances of their numbers changing drastically. We don't want another axolotl situation where there's more captive breds than native specimens, but outside of that, I hope these guys receive more time in the limelight at some point in the future, and a whole lot more research. Their polymorphism is really cool, and all in all, I just think they have a lot of charm. But that's going to be it for this installment of Herp Corner. As always, sources will be in the description. If you're interested in this topic, I'd recommend looking further into their husbandry or history. If you like what I do and know a specific reptile or amphibian you'd like to see me cover, put it in the comments. If you learned something new with this one, feel free to subscribe. I do these every other week. Like the video to support the channel. Have a good evening, morning, or afternoon. Thank you for listening, watching, whatever, and I'll see you next time.